and I just heard this huge like metallic clang like inside my head, and it was almost like I was stood next to like a church bell, and someone had just got a sledgehammer and hit this bell, and it just dong, and I was like, what was that?
Hello and welcome to this World Extreme Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Deb Swann, an advanced clinical practitioner in emergency medicine and pre-hospital emergency medicine, expedition medic and medic for the UK International Search and Rescue Team. Today, I'm joined by Justin Oliver Davis. Justin is a retired soldier, amputee and adaptive athlete and mountaineer. In 2011, when Justin was serving in Afghanistan, he stood on an improvised explosive device, resulting in the loss of both lower legs. Justin's story from that life-changing day to a recent valiant return from conquering Mera Peak in Nepal is inspiring, and I am really excited to be speaking to him today. Welcome, Justin. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to speak with us.
Good morning, Deb. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here now, having a chat with you. So thanks for welcoming me.
Fantastic. And I want to start really at the beginning of this quite inspiring journey. Can you take us back to Afghanistan, who you were serving with, what you were tasked to do, and the events leading up to your eventful day?
Sure. So it's a pleasure to be here. Firstly, so hello everyone, and thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. I was serving with two rifles back in 2011, and on this particular day, we were acting as a QRF patrol, and that is simply a quick reaction force patrol. And this particular example, there were a number of sort of contacts going on throughout the day, close to our checkpoint, and you could kind of hear the stuff sort of kicking off in the distance. And we were stood up and stood down and all day long, and all that means is that we were preparing to go out and support. And then we were told, no, it's okay, don't worry about it, just chill for a bit. So we were continuously going through that process throughout the day, a good number of times, like stood two, stood down, stood two, stood down. And finally, I can't remember the specific time, but I think it's like mid-afternoon, we heard this like volley of gunfire going off, and like, in the distance, not too far away, maybe a kilometer away, maybe a little bit less, within our area of operation. Certainly. And big volley of gunfire, got explosions, blah, blah, blah. And they came over the radio that basically another group of soldiers had been ambushed. They'd strayed into our AO and into Taliban territory, and the Taliban had basically taken advantage of that and just unleashed hell on them effectively. So it was our role then to try and get out and support them. They were being pinned down and under quite intense and heavy fire and accurate fire. So we were tasked to go out and assist. And there were only three of us that were trained to as a search kind of task, I suppose. So to have the capability of searching, we had to go and do a 3-week course down in Kent. And then so the three of us throughout the platoon or throughout the multiple or the group of soldiers, I was the closest one to the search equipment at the time when all this gunfire was going off and we got the call to go. So I just picked up the search equipment, and that was me leading the patrol out. And because there were three of us, we'd usually rotate between the three of us who would do the front man doing the searching and who would do the cover man, which is the person behind the searching guy at the front. And you would just, if you were searching, you'd be searching for IEDs. If you were the cover man, you'd literally be stood behind very close, making sure that any enemy popped out, you could be there to cover the search man. So I pick up the search equipment, and we're all kind of like buzzing because it's like, we're actually going out now. This is a job. We're going to get it done. So everyone's like high energy, super focused. Like the adrenaline is like it's just flowing through everyone. So everyone's like geared up, ready to rock. So we leave our checkpoint, and the checkpoint is just a manned position along a route, and it just secures the route so that people can't come in and out. So we leave our checkpoint and we head down towards this gunfire. And as we're sort of getting closer and closer, we're crossing irrigation ditches. We're going, through, high walled areas, low walled areas. There's, trees, there's vegetation. Some of it's very green, some of it's very sparse. So you're constantly like checking the surroundings, looking at the ground for any ground sign for devices laid in the ground. You're looking in the trees for any devices like set in the trees. So your senses are just like super high alert all the time, and your adrenaline is just burning through your body. So we're moving through this area, through the trees, through the fields, and gradually getting closer and closer to the gunfire. You can hear it getting closer. You start to see smoke rising, out of the irrigation ditches where people are engaging the enemy and everything's going on. And I remember just like searching through the irrigation ditches, because some of them had water in, some of them didn't. And you had to be aware of like command wires running through the irrigation ditches, which is just a wire running underneath the water. So it's invisible to the naked eye, running to a device that could be right next to you. So you're checking for these wires in ditches, you're checking in the trees for devices, you're just checking everything in case you're being lured into like, another secondary ambush, or maybe like funneled into an area where there's further IEDs. It later transpired that this was probably happening to us, or for whatever reason, there was a huge belt of IEDs in the area where we were patrolling through. And just making our way through, and I came out one side of this irrigation ditch, and I took a couple of paces, and I just heard this huge like metallic clang like inside my head, and it was almost like I was stood next to like a church bell, and someone had just got a sledgehammer and hit this bell, and it just dong, and I was like, what was that? What the hell was that? And at this point I'm lying on the floor on my back, so it's just like, and it's taken a few seconds for my brain to catch up to what's happened. And I'm like, what was that? And it's like, was that improvised explosive device? Was it rocket propelled grenade? Was it gunshot? Am I even awake? Am I dreaming? What is this reality? What's happening? And then, maybe 5-10 seconds catch up, and I'm like, wow, that is like, I've been hit, something's seriously wrong. So I'm lying on my back, there's dust everywhere. I can barely sort of see because dust and dirt is all just in my face, and debris and lots of like mud and stuff in my mouth. All the dust is collecting, and you can just hear people shouting, and, very muffled, because my ears are just, one ear's perforated, the other one's damaged quite badly. So everything's like almost like I'm wearing ear defense when I'm not, so it's like this huge explosion, and I'm almost deaf, and I can just kind of see smoke and everything around me while I'm led on the floor. And I'm looking up, and my hand is kind of in my vision, and I can see my hand is like really badly damaged. And I'm like, oh no, I've been hit. I've definitely been blown up. But it's like working out how that happened. So all these thoughts are running through my head about, did I make a mistake? Did I get shot? What happened? I didn't see anything happen. So yeah, and then, so work out that I've been blown up. The guys get to me on the ground, and, it's worth mentioning that, a good friend of mine, Ryan Hone, Ginge, his nickname, he was one of the first guys to me on the ground. In fact, he was the first guy to me on the ground, and he had total disregard for his own safety. And ran from almost the middle of the patrol right up to the front, across the irrigation ditch, knowing that there was IEDs in the ground. He just ran up to me and started issuing sort of life-saving support. And without that action, of which he was commended for, I may not have actually been there much longer, to be honest. So without that immediate, those skills and drills coming, just so rapid and so quick. It wasn't the first time he's done it. He's done it on previous deployments as well. So the guy's a bit of a legend. And without that immediate support, I don't know if I'd be here now. And also, the rest of the guys and girls on the ground as well that helped me, absolutely fantastic. Because, although people just say, and we were just saying, we're just doing our job, it's still, you're still putting your own life in your hands. Yeah. Seeing one of your mates just get blown up in front of you and you're running into that area.
Yeah.
And it later transpires that there were further IEDs, around us, where I got blown up. So they could have stood on one kind of at any second, which, it's a dangerous place. It's an extremely dangerous place. So,
I've heard.
Yeah, so you might have heard. So yeah, but, and the guy's sorting me out on the ground. It's about 25 minutes until the medical emergency response Chinook can get to us. So, within those sort of 25 minutes, every single possibility and thought is running through your mind. I got issued a bit of morphine, which is fine. Kind of settled it down a bit and calmed me down. But, when the medic came to me and she was like, said on the radio, basically, we've got a double amputee. I was like, oh man, because I didn't really understand at that point. I was kind of led on my back, and the guys were sorting my legs out and sorting my hand out, but I didn't necessarily have a chance to sit up and actually see, properly understand, when she actually, because I saw my legs and I was like, well, one is definitely gone because the right leg I stood on it with, and that is completely evaporated, just below the knee. So it's, it's almost like you can see the sort of the fragmented bone like sticking out, and it's like the flesh is just burnt and just torn. And my left leg was like sort of, halfway up the shin, that was just sort of cut, but it was like hanging. So it was only maybe connected with a bit of skin and maybe some ligament and maybe some muscle and some flesh, but it was certainly in a bad way. But when the medic got to me and she kind of confirmed that I was a double amputee at that point, I was like, oh man, that was kind of like the moment that my life changed completely. And probably one of the hardest moments, I think, of my life then, because it was understanding then that my life is going to be a completely different journey. There was no way that I was going to fulfill my dream to, continue soldiering and then progress in that field and have a longer career. So my life got turned upside down at that moment. So yeah, lying on the floor for about 25 minutes, kind of the guys just like sorting me out and firing warning shots at people that are sort of moving up to our position, because, as soon as the Taliban hear that an ID's gone off, they've got spotters in the area, so they'll know that someone's been injured and something's happening, and they know then that a chopper's going to come in and try and get this casualty out. So they're going to move into the area and they're going to try and take the chopper out as well.
Yeah.
So if they can get a whole medical emergency response team and a casualty and everyone else that's on that Chinook, if they can take out the sky, that's a huge win for them. So they're going to step up their advances towards that position, and that's what they were doing. And all this time, this ambush is still going on, so the guys are still pinned down over there. And I'm just led there thinking, these guys are all pinned down in this contact. And because I've got blown up now, I don't know what's going to happen to these guys, because we're meant to be going out and like kind of assisting and saving them from this incident. So you've got all this stuff sort of running through your mind, thinking, I'm letting these guys down, letting the team down now. And now they've got to completely switch the objective of the mission from, advancing down towards a contact and probably cutting the Taliban off and ambushing them, to now extracting one of their own out the area. So the task and everything and the focus just completely switched. So I've got to, you've got to say, you've got to give credit, I think, to the training that we experienced over the years before that, and everyone's prior experience going on different tours and having us, senior commanders there with us that are just so much more experienced than the younger guys. And, if we didn't have those people there, I definitely wouldn't be here now. Yeah. Absolutely. There's no two ways about it at all. So that was that. And, got off the ground, got on the back of the Mert, and then on the Chinook, they laid me out, stripped all my clothes off, going through all the correct procedures. And you all know the technical term for this, but I can't remember it. But when they put a line in through your sternum, what's that one? So they basically put one.
Intraosseous needle. So I suppose if your medic on the ground couldn't get IV intravenous access, then it's definitely a military, a very military way of getting access is putting in the sternum, and I think it comes from from the experiences in Afghanistan with the IEDs, and if you've got a double, triple amputee, your chances of getting access are being reduced. So actually, you've got a nice thin bit of bone in your chest that you can get.
I didn't feel thin, I tell you, when they put it in.
Yeah, that you need
That's
a bit of a push behind it to actually.
Yeah, you do. I thought I was imagining it, but
Yeah.
when this is the last thing I remember. I remember looking up at this guy, and he just put his hands on my chest, and I just felt him just go punch this thing through, and that was the last thing I remember, because I was like, it was almost like it winded me, because I was like sharp intake of breath, and then I remember trying to grab him, and that was the last thing I remember. Then I went to sleep, and then woke up in the UK, so in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So all a fairly traumatic couple of days in that regard. So
I would say slightly traumatic.
Yeah. So that's kind of the incident. That was what I was involved in. And then it is just, then it was the fight for sort of independence then, and the beginning of my recovery phases, which began first at the Queen Elizabeth, and then continued at Headley Court down in Surrey.
Before we move on to the kind of immediate post-injury phase and rehab phase, from going back to the incident, you see you were quite lucid throughout that entire time, and you seem to have quite vivid recall of what you were hearing, what you were experiencing, and what you were seeing. You said it was about 25 minutes. Did it, before the MERT came, did it feel like 25 minutes? Did it feel like 25 hours, or did it go in a flash?
I felt like hours.
Did it?
Felt like hours. Yeah, it felt like hours, because you've gone from a position of like leading a patrol, knowing that you are going to be engaging the enemy in a matter of minutes, so knowing full well that you're going to walk into the enemy, basically, because that's what we're there to do. So you've gone from that position, like in your mind, this is the years of training, everything have built up to this minute. It's like, this is the real job that we're going to do. This is why I'm here. This is everything that I've meant to be doing. I felt like this was my kind of calling. This was exactly what I was meant to be at this time in my life. So it was like, this is it. This is what I'm here to do. So let's do it. And you've gone from that position to then being incapacitated and having the whole team then switch focus and then looking after you. So you're like, as the guy that's leading the patrol, you're trusted to have good enough skills, awareness and communication and tactics and all soldiering capabilities, to do that job. It's a very serious position. And, not everyone wants to do it. You're at the front of the patrol at any minute, anything can happen. Someone could jump out and just engage you, or you can stand on something, And I'm not saying you're the only guy that's going to get shot or the only guy that's going to get blown up. But when you're moving in single file towards the enemy position, there's a good chance that you're going to get the first burst, of fire, so, or you're going to be targeted first because you're the search guy. So, for me, that position was just everything, because it was like you had all the responsibility, you had to communicate back, there was just, it encompassed everything I wanted at that time in my life. And it's just extremely challenging to then go into a position where you're then being looked after by the whole team. But yeah, I can remember, most things about that. And it felt like such a long time being led on the floor, because, as soon as someone tells you effectively your life is no longer the same, that there's no chance of your mind calming in that moment. So you're just kind of going, well, am I actually going to get out of it? Am I actually going to survive? What happens, the longer we're led here, the more chance the Taliban are going to regroup, they're going to push up to our position, and they're going to try and, increase the damage that they've already caused. So all of that's running through your mind. You're thinking, what happens if this? What happens if that? What happens if this? Am I even going to get out of this situation? if the Taliban move up in numbers to our position and we can't hold them off, essentially I might get left in this place, so you might meet a grisly end as such. But it's kind of like we all accepted that anyway, I think. If we're there, part of it, I think. So yeah, felt like a long time.
Yeah. You alluded to the training, which is vital for you guys, and that would include medical training as well for all of you. Were you all team medics of some description?
We're all team medics. Yeah, we're all team medics. Yeah,
and
so we all had that basic. We all had that very basic kind of life-saving support, golden hour sort of support there, and very, very fortunate to have the medic with us. She was the combat medic, Julie May, absolute legend. She is well known amongst various different units and battalions because she's medals for gallantry. She's done various different things on operations. She's highly decorated. She's an extremely humble individual, and I have so much respect for this woman. She, without her on the ground and the guys, there's no way that there'd be many more casualties and many more statistics for sure. But she did a fantastic job in kind of her knowledge and experience was just outstanding. It's almost like we didn't need to be trained because we had this woman with us. You know what I mean? She was she was incredible, and it's amazing actually. Like just a slight spin off from that is that on my 10-year anniversary, I did the fan dance, which is just it's like a 23-kilometer route over the Brecons, and I did that and invited a few people that were there on the day, and she showed up, and it had been the first time I'd seen her for a number of years, and it was just quite an emotional time and a moment to spend with her. So huge amounts of respect for those people.
Yeah, fantastic.
So we had that basic level of training, and just thankful for people that had a higher level of training as well.
Yeah. And it was it Ginge who put the tourniquets on, or were you able to do your own tourniquets?
Yes.
Or what did you?
There was no way I was going to do my own tourniquets. I mean, I've heard stories of guys, whipping out tourniquets and sticking them on themselves, and I'm like, don't know how you did that, man. You legends, because my hand, I'll show you, but the guys and girls won't be able to hear on the audio, but I've got a little bit of damage to a couple of fingers missing and some frag to my palm, and also some I had a fasciotomy on my forearm there, and also got some blast damage up on my forearm. So my right hand was kind of incapacitated. There was no way I was going to stick that on, and I couldn't even really sit up. So I was just there was no way that was going to happen. So I was essentially bleeding out and just waiting for someone to save me. So that was it.
And along comes Ginge.
Along comes Ginge, and along comes the other guys, and they managed to sort me out and get the tourniquets on. And they're not very nice having tourniquets on as well. So very,
they're
very
quite
painful.
Yeah.
God, yeah. And obviously you got to put 2 on. So onto each
double
stump.
thing.
So, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. It's is there anything in particular that stuck with you with that from the point of injury and your friends and colleagues doing their immediate care? Is there anything that sticks with you about that, good or bad, or like someone telling you you're going to be okay, you're going to be fine, keeping you informed of what's going on? Or were people just so task focused, the tourniquets are going on, the morphine's going in, and everything else is going on around you?
The guys were fantastic, because we had some experienced members in the team. Some of the junior commanders and some of the senior commanders were extremely experienced. They'd been through some horrendous times on earlier Afghan tours. So for them, this was kind of like the expected. So it was like they were already drilled, and their skills were high level. So as soon as it happened, it was like the more experienced guys, they don't even think. They're just like, bang, straight in. This is what needs to happen. Straight on the net, on the radio, issue the 9-liner, to inform higher HQ that, the casualty in the situation. And as soon as that happens, it's like, we'll get the casualties sort of squared away. And then they were keeping me informed all the time. But because of my experience, we were our skills were fairly high level because we'd done so many casualty evacuation drills, up to this point. It was almost like every other day in camp before going on tour, we're doing casualty evacuation drills. So it's constant. So it was like bang, 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 and it just happened. It was just training just kicks in.
Yeah.
And like no one needs to think, because before we go out on the patrol, it's like, well, who's got the stretcher? Who's got morphine? Who's got this? Who's got that? Have you got this? Have you got that? Yes, cool. So, and it'll be like, right, you've got that, you've got that, you've got that. What actions on? So point man getting blown up. Actions on cover man getting blown up. So this is all in the briefs before we go on patrols. So everyone is fully aware of their role, what they need to do, and at what moment in time they need to do it. So yeah, I just think that our skill levels were high, and I think the only improvement maybe is on my part would be to have easier accessible med kit, because when you're like, I think as the time progressed through the Afghan experiences, guys and girls were having tourniquets kind of in their top left shoulder pockets, and they weren't always doing that, so it had to progress through time and experience, people kind of becoming a casualty, first responder, getting to them and going, where's your tourniquet? Where is it? And you're going, well, it's in that pouch, there. Which pouch? Left-hand side. Which left? My left or your left? So then I think things advance, and it's kind of like, right, everyone, tourniquet in your top left pocket so it can be seen. If you get blown up, it's there. We know where it is. So I think from my point of view, I probably would have had more accessible tourniquets. But I don't need to know that again, do I?
No.
It's a one-time issue. It's a one-time issue. Well, you missed a trick there, didn't you?
But that's
for that mistake, you die.
That's useful for just unpicking this. That it's useful that the training is vital. Your good communications is vital, and actually having a plan that everyone knows about is really important, and that you can use that in any walk of life, but particularly in the medical world or mountain leader, expedition leader, it's having that the comms and the plans and the training all in place, and it works. And it's from lots of things that we have in Civvy Street now, it's been learnt from the conflict in Afghanistan. So yeah. Moving on to your repatriation. So you were loaded onto the MERT. Then you don't remember much else from that. And then you wake up at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Was that 24, 48 hours later? Do you know how long that was?
I felt like it was, obviously, because I was asleep, and then just woke up. Felt like it was 10 minutes later. But,
yeah.
It wasn't many hours later. I think I woke up at apparently 4:00 the next morning. But I had no idea what time it is, no concept of where I was, what time it is, what was going on. For all I was aware, I was in Afghanistan still, on my way to an ambush. So it was like, because I don't know whether the brain kind of like maybe compartmentalizes it while it's trying to deal with everything else that's going on. I have no knowledge of this, but that's only an assumption that when I'm unconscious, I don't know what's happening to the subconscious mind or what's going on at that level. But yeah, when I woke up, it was like fight or flight, because your body's in a huge amount of trauma, and you don't kind of understand, even though the things I'm seeing don't correlate to what I think I should be experiencing. So, I'm awake one minute in Afghanistan, patrolling towards an ambush, ready to engage the enemy at any second, any minute. Next minute, it doesn't matter how much time is in between that when I'm asleep, but I've come to, and I'm surrounded by 4 white walls, machines beeping, lines everywhere, and when I came to, I remember, because I was dreaming that I was in Afghanistan, and that I'd been blown up, and that I had my helmet chin strap in my mouth and I was choking. But what was actually happening was I was pulling on the tubes that were either feeding, or I don't know what they were, I think probably feeding up my nose into my stomach maybe. And I was
Mm-hmm.
pulling on this tube and then at that time it was coming up through my throat, and I was choking on that because I was pulling this tube out. So that's the moment that I came round, and I know I'm awaking from this dream where I think I'm being blown up and I think I'm choking on a helmet chin strap, to actually being led in a hospital bed and just pulling on a tube through in my throat. So at that minute, it's kind of like, well, where am I? What's going on? And then it's fight or flight. You don't know what's happening. So you're kind of preparing for whatever. So
Yeah.
that was that extremely traumatic period of time for me and for my parents, who were kind of sat there up by the side of my bed. So it wasn't great for them.
No. So how long were you on intensive care before you moved? You were
Seven,
stepped down.
7 days
Okay.
ish, maybe a little bit less, 5 to 7 days. 5 to
Do you
7 days.
remember much of that time, or were you still in that fight, flight, freeze?
It's horrendous, horrendous, really horrendous, because it was like, it's a very, I don't go back to that place very often because I don't really get asked about it too much. I don't get asked about the intricacies, all the intimate details of being in intensive care. So it's like my memories of that are I guess they're quite convoluted, because it's was I awake? Was I dreaming? Was I not? Because there's so many medications going into your system, and there's just so many lines and everything else, and into every limb, and you've got bandages, and you can barely move. You're in so much pain. One of the main things I can remember is getting my hair washed for the first time. Well, it's lovely because the nurses are on 24-hour watch, right? So it must be on shift patterns and 24-hour watch. And I remember just coming to, and I was like, I just had all this dust and dirt all still in my hair and everything. They cleaned me up as best as possible, but they obviously didn't want to wash my hair because they were dealing with other stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, is there any chance you can just get this crap out of my hair, please? And this young nurse was washing my hair, and I was like, that's felt the most amazing, like, normality back, to just feel kind of like the warm water running through my hair. I was like, oh, this feels normal. And then it's like, as things progressed throughout the days, I could sort of move my arm a little bit more, I could sit up a bit more. I was sort of, as the consultants and everyone was coming in, explaining the situation, explaining what had happened, they were kind of, I was gaining more information from them and building the picture for myself. But you still can't help sit there and think, oh man, the guys are still out there doing the job that I loved and that I really wanted to be involved in. And for me, it was incredibly hard, because as soon as you get injured, especially in that way, you're just sucked out of that environment and pop straight into another one.
So being a patient on intensive care is a traumatic experience for everyone, and you then you've had a pretty traumatic event leading you to intensive care, and I think it sounds like you had a fairly normal reaction to a fairly traumatic event. When did you start to get that determination to just push through this and not let it beat you and not let it get the better of you? Was it at that stage, or did that come later, or did you already have it?
Yeah, I think I already had it. That was I must have had it from, must be, it's innate, I think, in me, but it gets solidified in the military, especially in those infantry units, because and specifically the ones that have been on numerous operational tours before. So all that experience from the seniors in those units just carries through to the younger guys, the more junior guys that are coming in. So yeah, it's just an amalgamation of I guess, like, brute force and resilience and adapting to the situation. So whatever sort of happened to me, it was kind of like this was going to be my new fight, my new battle. So if I couldn't do what I wanted to do, as a soldier, then I have to do this for my own recovery, and I have to turn this into my own, my own recovery journey, my own fight and my own battle. So all of my energy for a good number of years just was completely focused on my recovery and regaining some independence. So I spent, the best part of this last decade just trying to rebuild my life again. And that took a huge amount of work and a huge amount of focus. Like there was literally nothing else going on in my life at that time, because I was just like laser focused on becoming the best version of this new version of me. So yeah, it was always there, but it was solidified in the military. And then I guess I kind of felt like I had to sort of build my own team around myself to then be able to progress, because I felt like I'd kind of lost my place in a team that I valued really highly. And and coming to the realization, the understanding that actually you're just a very small part in a big machine, and actually, when that part gets broken, it can easily be replaced. So, and that takes a bit of working through, and I think I felt a little bit abandoned, not necessarily by, the military in themselves, because all the care and the support is there. It's just that I wanted to be still doing the job that I was doing and being a frontline infantry soldier, and then being plucked away from that and out of that environment completely into the medical environment just felt like it was like two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And it took a bit of working through, and it's a bit like you just felt a little bit like I'd let myself down, and I know it's being very harsh on myself, but we were kind of in that position where we were, very focused on the task and getting things done, and if something went wrong, then people had to be held responsible for it, and then you held yourself responsible because you took ownership of things that went wrong, and that's how the teamwork kind of progressed, and that's how we built a solid team and how we did the things we did in Afghan. So yeah, a very challenging period of time for me, for sure.
Yeah, and that's natural, because your decision to leave the military, or your decision to, how you want to live your life, has been taken from you, hasn't it? You've lost control of that part of your life, but you gain control somewhere else, and that seems to be your motivation to actually make something of this, to push forward.
Yeah, it was about regaining the control that I lost, and the independence that I lost, and I don't know. Yes, it's a difficult one to try and explain, but it's a hell of a journey to try and pick that apart and try and understand that. But I think the point that I wanted to make was that I was, by taking ownership of that, so actually saying, well, I put myself in a position, I picked up the search equipment, I went on the search course, so you can track it all the way back, and it's like, then you can go all the way back to why you joined the military. You can say, well, I wasn't conscripted, I made all these decisions, and all these decisions took me to this moment in time. And yes, maybe I got blown up or stood on an ID, but I actually made the decision to stand in that place. So it's all about, taking ownership of the situation, and that helped me a great deal to get through it. So it wasn't like I steered widely away from the victim sort of mentality of, why did I get blown up? Why did this happen to me? Why, of course you ask those questions of yourself, but I didn't ask the questions of the wider world. I didn't say, why did the Taliban put an ID in this place? Well, it's pretty obvious why they put an ID in that place, because it's tactically sound decision to make. The enemy, from their perspective, are going to move up from this position, put some IDs there, or ambush them there. It's a tactical decision. And actually, I remember a quote from one of the senior guys that actually got blown up the morning that I got blown up, and we were actually acting as QRF to rescue him as well. So prior to me getting blown up, so one of the platoon sergeants got involved in an ambush himself, and he got a huge piece of shrapnel, went straight through his lower leg and out the other side. So we were involved in actually extracting him out of that in the morning, and then
later on, we went out on this job where I got blown up. So there was quite a bit going on. There's quite a few funny stories where I met him in hospital, and he didn't know I got injured later on because he was obviously got there before me. I'm going to swear now, but he came into my room and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And I kind of looked at him and I said, "Oh, what the fuck are you doing here?" Because I totally forgot that he got blown up. So I ended up with two of us who had been in the same company, had been in two separate incidents that day, both got blown up, both got injured. And then we come together in the hospital, and it was like shock, because we totally forgot that he got blown up, and he didn't know I got blown up. And he was like, "Oh man," he was like, and we shared some good stories together. And he actually said something to me that stuck with me over the years. He said, "Listen," he said, "you didn't kind of get injured via, a freak accident. You didn't get involved in a car crash like some guys do. They go out and get drunk and they crash the car and they end up in heavy court." He said, "Listen, you're an infantry soldier. We're here in a unit. We're on the front line. We're doing stuff that we really want to do." He said, "You're there. You stepped up. You wanted to do this. You were in that position. You were doing a good job." He said, "You got injured by a well-placed tactical device." He said, "There's no way you could really find that in that situation. There was no real way you were going to detect that. The speed we were moving, the job that we were on, everything that was happening." He said, "The chance of you finding that ID, slim." So he said, give yourself a little bit of a break. You got caught out by a well-placed tactical device. He said, "It's not, could have been a lot worse." I said, "It's true." All these kind of things helped me out through the process, because it takes it all away from you, because you think, okay, there was a guy here laying these IEDs, but he's thinking about how to lay them. He's thinking, if I put it there, is he going to see it? Is he going to put it there? So you got to put yourself in both positions. But this might be a little bit naughty of me to say as well, but the guy that was laying the IEDs later got blown up by Hellfire strike. So so there was a little bit of closure there for me. It's quite dark. It's quite dark. But I mean, the main guy that was laying IDs in the area then, got taken out by an Apache, of which happened sort of a few days before I got blown up. So this is a really strange kind of. It's really strange. It all goes full circle, but. We were on QRF again, and this is a number of days before I got blown up, and we heard this like whoosh, like a RPG, rocket propelled grenade, and it went shh, and you heard this explosion, and we were like, "What was that? What was that?" And we had no idea, and it was almost like right next to our checkpoint. So we were like, "Right, stand two, enemies coming, get prepared to fight." And all it was an Apache had basically targeted this guy and just taken him out by Hellfire. So we actually did the battle damage assessment on this guy that had been taken out by the Apache. So it's so strange to talk about this, because a number of days later, I got blown up by possibly one of his devices that he laid.
Wow.
So it was almost like, it almost sort of went full circle. And I remember being on this patrol to visit the area where this guy got taken out by the Apache, and there's various different parts of, clothing and etc. And, bits of this guy, you could see where he'd been extracted out of the area by the enemy. And it's all just very surreal. There's like bits of like American dollars that have been blown up on the floor, and, bits of clothing, and we're taking all these kind of parts of this guy and putting them in evidence bags and sending them off, getting them identified and such. And it's just like, just a very surreal experience for that all to happen, and and you kind of joining all the dots together.
Very much like that,
mixed up and played backwards and forwards. It's wow.
Wow. Going back to, you said taking ownership for this, I think that's there's a lot to be said for taking ownership and perhaps trying to move away from feeling like a victim, because I think that then if you take ownership for something, then that does push you on to achieve things. And let's talk about this now, Justin. So following you on Instagram, I've seen you parachuting, bungee jumping, scuba diving, doing your weights, your walking, hill walking, and now mountaineering. And mountaineering seems to be the bulk of what you're doing at the moment. Tell us about how that's come about and why mountaineering, why the mountains?
Okay. I guess starting with all those activities you mentioned before, I just wanted to kind of live life, and I wanted to experience things. I wanted to still be able to access and do things, and kind of prove to myself that yes, maybe you're disabled, maybe you don't have legs, but you're going to find a way to do these things, you know. And that was for me. It was about still regaining that independence, but also by me doing these tasks and going and doing these adventures and parachuting, not being attached to someone, not doing tandems, gaining my license and jumping myself and throwing myself out of planes and, and free flying and stuff like that and jumping in groups. And it's just amazing really to be able to do that and have the support and people really keen to kind of like see you and go, like just looking at you going, like this isn't meant to be happening. This, like a person with no legs isn't meant to be walking to a plane with a parachute strapped to them and just throwing themselves out and enjoying it. Like, and you could just see people looking at me like lining up to do their first ever like tandem jump, and they'd just be like looking at you and you could read their thoughts, and they're thinking, what the hell is going on with this person? Like, what is this guy up to? This is pretty incredible. So like I kind of fed off of that, and I was like, well, if I can do these things and it inspires other people, then and have fun at the same time, then do it, And people see it and they get inspired. They go, wow, if this guy can do it, why can't I do it? I'll find a way.
Yeah.
And that was always the way that I wanted to operate. I wanted to just have an idea, work as hard as I could towards it, and find a way to do it. So, and that led me, to finally becoming more active. And this only sort of happened after I had a number of surgeries to sort of tidy up my stumps a bit, and first when I got injured, I had through knee, so knee disarticulation, and I guess for those that aren't medically orientated, that just meant I had the full length of my femurs. I didn't have anything below that, but I had my full femurs. So on the end of the femur is quite a large surface area, isn't it? It's almost like a fist. So I could then weight bear on that area when I was using my prosthetics. So when I was walking around, that was great. But because of the shape of the end of the femur, on the condyle sort of section on the sides of it, there were always areas where I was rubbing through the skin when I was wearing my prosthetics. So I had a number of surgeries over the last sort of 6, 7, 8 years to tidy them up, open the stump up completely, shave some of the femur off, put it back together, hope that it would be enough the bone shaved off that it would be comfortable, put it back together, heal over a number of months, between 3 and 6 months, then start walking again, then work out it wasn't quite right, and then go back again, more surgery. And I had a handful of these surgeries until I got to the point where I was like, there's no more surgeries I can have that are really going to tidy these stumps up enough for me to walk around with comfort and do the things that I really aspire to do. I want to push myself and my body as hard as it will go and far as it will go. And I want to utilize my legs to do that. I don't want to just use my arms to rowing or cycling or whatever. I want to use my legs and my prosthetics. So to do this, the only thing that was left, the option left for me was to cut the end of my femurs off. So I decided that, it's just like a light bulb moment. It was like, you spent the last 6, 7 years really struggling with all these minor surgeries and all those setbacks and all the recoveries. It was taking it out of me. So I was like, I got to do something, a little bit more drastic to try and tidy this up and sort this problem out. So a light bulb moment, it was like, why don't you just cut that end of the femur off? There are people with above knee amputations and they get on really well. Why don't you just get rid of it? And from that moment, I was like, that's a really good idea, and then it was like, so I went in to see my surgeon, and Alex Crick, she's very well respected plastic surgeon in Salisbury, an extremely experienced, amazing woman. so calm, so collected, so experienced, and just a fantastic person. Popped in to see her, messaged her. I was like, "Can I come in and see you? Want to have a chat about some stuff?" She said, "Yeah, come in." Arranged an appointment. Went in to see her and Mr. Dunn, Rob Dunn, and they both just kind of sat there looking at me, and they both know me, and they both know what I've been doing, like running around, parachuting, blah blah blah. They know I'm active. They've done all my other surgeries as well, and they were like, "We know exactly what you want to do. You don't even have to tell us, really. We know the next stage for you." I was like, "Yeah, cool. So I want to go above the knee. Will you do it for me?" And they were like, "There's not really something that we would like to do. We wouldn't. This is not a normal kind of surgery. This is not the normal pathway we would take, because the amputation and the stump that you have now is allowing you to be 95% more active than most amputees. But my position was that I was actually being 5% active. I had so much more to give. I was living a day-to-day life, but I wasn't able to run a marathon. I wasn't able to climb a mountain. I wasn't able to do this. And that's what I was aspiring towards.
Uh-huh.
So they were like, you're so active. You're one of our most active patients that we know. You're doing so well. I'm like, I'm not. That's your perspective. It's not mine.
Yeah.
Not my position. So they said, all right, we'll agree, but the only way we're going to do it is if we do one at a time. So, and you have to prove to us that this one works, and then you do the other one. I said, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. I said, when can you do it? They said, well, when do you want it? I said, ASAP, let's go. So honestly, they said, right. They pulled up the diary, and it was just like, we got this appointment, this appointment, this appointment. I was like, let's have it. Let's just do it. Let's just get in. My decision is made. My mind's made up. Let's do it. So it comes around to the point, do the surgery, do one leg, get rid of that one. 4 inches I had taken off of the femur. Few days in hospital, left in a wheelchair. But they were like, listen, you got to promise us that you won't put your leg on the other leg and start hopping around on crutches. I was like, yeah, of course. I'm not going to do that. I just use my wheelchair all the time, be fine. They're like, okay, cool, no problem. So I leave hospital, and probably 2 or 3 days, I'm getting frustrated with the wheelchair. I can't access anywhere. I can't do anything. So I'm like, right, fine. I'll just whack my prosthetic on my good stump, and I'll just go around on crutches. So I spent 6 months hopping around on one leg and a crutch until my stump healed and I could get a prosthetic back on that one. Then as soon as I got a prosthetic back on that one, the next appointment was booked and made to do the other leg. So it was this really fast turnaround to get both my legs done. And I had them done in about 18 months, total, and recovered. So that was another 18 months essentially gone. But it was a huge investment for me, because from that, bang, I was gone. And once I healed, I think it was 6 months later after the second leg had healed, I was stood on top of Mont Blanc, and that for me was just mind blowing. And I sent a picture to my surgeon, and they were just like, this is incredible. But I had to face a lot of there was a few negative influences and people trying to dissuade me from doing this. And I was like, from your point of view, you have valid reason to try and steer me away from this. But from my point of view, I'm living with this, and I've lived with this for a number of years now. And this needs to change. This is not my life. It's not my direction that I'm going in. It's not my purpose. So off they come. That gets done. I had physios, I had prosthetics professionals, I had, other surgeons, other people wearing prosthetics telling me, mate, this is risky. This is really risky. You're super active. You're jumping out of planes. You're doing from the outside. You're doing everything that we would want you to do and that you should be doing. And so I had to I had to put that all to one side and just say, these are their perspectives and not mine. This is my 100% my decision. I have to take ownership for that again. So I did it, took ownership for it, and I proved to myself that it worked. And I will say that no stump, no matter the shape, the size, the length, will be perfect. It will just be suitable for its designed purpose. And I designed these stumps to have prosthetics that fit to them better than they did before, and that's what they do now.
Yeah.
And now I'm more active than I ever have been, as a prosthetics user, and that's just because I made the decision and took that huge risk to do that, and then from there it began with Mont Blanc, and that was my first major challenge.
Were you hooked at that point?
I was hooked. I was hooked, and I tell you, it for me, it acted as a huge like trauma release as well, because all those years, all that pent up kind of like, you know, energies and time spent just kind of sat recovering, when all I wanted to do was go out and be active and do everything that I'd always wanted to do. As a child, I was always active, running about, playing football, climbing, making dens, all that stuff young boys do and girls do. And that kind of got removed, and I had to then go through this process of recovering until I got to a position where I was able to then walk down the street, go to the gym, go walk up a hill, climb a mountain, jump out of a plane, all this stuff. So it's taken so much work, honestly. It's been my whole life since.
Yeah.
But yeah, climbing Mont Blanc, it massive trauma release, because it was like, you know, this wasn't even near the summit, but I was above the clouds and the sun was rising. It was on summit day, I think, and it was probably at 4,000, maybe 4,400 meters, maybe. And I just like had a moment where I was by myself, and I had no control of like my emotions. I was just like, tears were just streaming out of me. I was just bawling. I was just like, oh my gosh. And there was no way I could stop it, no matter what happened. And it was almost like the last, I think it was 7 years at that point, had come to this moment where it's like, you've made it, you've done it, you've recovered, and now look where you are now. And it was just almost, it was a magical moment that I probably won't ever forget. For me.
Yeah.
And at that moment, it was just like, you got to do more of this. You've got to do more of it. So
yeah,
and that's where it began.
It's fascinating to watch, actually. And as I've said earlier, it's really inspiring. Just seeing how you adapt to the environment that you're in, and you've got your prosthetics, and then there's different uses, or like different terrains that you have use different legs for. Is going as you're going up and it's getting colder, it zaps battery life from your legs. Is that when you have to adapt, or is it the terrain that makes you adapt to whatever legs you're wearing?
It's a good question. It's actually the terrain. It's a terrain. There are so many different variables, Debs, for this. It's like not one prosthetic for every movement, not one length of prosthetic for every type of movement, not one kind of there's not one shoe. There's not one so I guess we can use this analogy, I suppose. There's like, there's not one shoe for every type of movement, right? So running shoe, like dress shoe, dancing shoe, all those different types of shoe. So it's exactly the same with prosthetics, so you need a different piece of kit to do different tasks. And it really, it's defined by gradient and also surface and altitude as well. So, if I'm walking on gravel and it's flat, I'll wear my long legs, my microprocessor knees, and they'll be easy because, easier to cover distance. They're more of a natural movement. I'm used to them. It's just become normal life for me to wear these prosthetics. But then when I'm doing stuff like weightlifting and I need to be closer to the ground, I'll wear what's known as stubbies. But these ones I've designed myself so that they have like a rounded bottom rather than a flat bottom. So I designed them with the help of some friends in America, and they helped me with the CAD drawing of them, and then I 3D printed them at home. And then so they're made out of like a type of plastic printed on the printer, and designed exactly how I want for lifting weights. So most people that wear prosthetics want to be stable and secure. They just want to have a flat bottom so they can stand and be and not have to worry about using all this energy and core stability to actually maintain their position. Whereas for me, I'm actually like, well, to improve my life in general, I need to be strong, I need to be fit, I need to be healthy. I need to be able to use my prosthetics, and I need to be able to walk long distances just to integrate into normal life. I need to be able to walk down the street and just be a normal human being. So I need to be fit. I need to be strong. My prosthetics need to work with me, and I need to work with them. So in order to do that, I need to have a very strong core. So it's like, well, how am I going to get a strong core? Well, instead of having prosthetics that make me stable, I'll have prosthetics that make me unstable. So I have to use my muscles in my body and everything to secure me in that position, and that for me has been one of the main cornerstones of my progression. It's actually doing the opposite to what most people do. And it's just allowed me to progress within myself and have, personal progression. That's just the way I see it. It's like, how do I get better? Well, I need to do this and this. Okay, let's do it. And I do it, So different prosthetics for different stuff. And then if I go in the mountains, when I was in Nepal just recently, I was using my long microprocessor knees, my everyday legs for the majority of the trek into the mountain. And then when I got sort of onto the snow and the ice, I changed the feet on them, so they were like crampons on the bottom. And then as it got steeper, I took my long legs off and I put my shorter legs on so that I was closer to the ground and I could use ice axes and kind of be like on all fours. So then I'm using all of my back muscles, I'm using all of my chest, all of my core. I'm using a lot more muscle groups to help me move up the mountain rather than just relying on like my lower body and my lower back to use long legs, So the terrain dictates it really, and the surface, and whether it's ice, snow, gravel, whatever. So yeah, and I just have to make my own if I can't find them. So that's what I do.
That's amazing that you've 3D printed your your prosthetics or the feet that you need that's designed specifically for you because that's what you need at that moment. That's amazing.
Couldn't find them. Yeah, I couldn't find them anywhere. So I'm like, well, this is a stumbling block. It's like how do I get past this problem? This was during the lockdown that I kind of like had all my attention focused on this. So like I had a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of focus into this area, and out of that lockdown produced these feet. And then from there, I still use them now, and they're so durable, they'll last forever. So,
I love that.
One of my goals for them is to get them, maybe to get them to other people somehow. This is one of my goals. I'm not sure how I can do that yet, and the intricacies around and the legalities of it, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try and get them to people that need them.
Yeah, I don't doubt for a moment that you won't. So watch this space.
Yeah.
So tell me, let's just have a quick chat about Merah Peak then. How did that come about, and how was that experience?
Merah Peak came about as a natural progression, really, because when I went to Mont Blanc, did that, and then from there I went to Kilimanjaro, did that, and then from there, I was like, oh, maybe I can like attempt 7 summits. So this is another one of my longer term goals. I'm hoping to progress in that. But yeah, the Merah Peak was kind of the next kind of step, because it was like, well, you need to gain a bit more altitude experience. So, go to an easy-ish mountain in the Himalayas and see how you get on. That's basically the thought process.
Okay.
And then it was like, speaking to some of the guys, they were like, yeah, Merah Peak is a trekking peak. You'll gain, you'll be able to go up above 6,000 meters. You'll be able to experience, almost an expedition kind of vibe. So it was as simple as that. And that's where the trip was sort of born from. And off we went. Off we went up to Merah Peak.
That's amazing. Oh, I'll do Merah Peak. All right then. Funnily enough, he did it.
I'll tell you what though. Like I don't know whether to call the trip a success. I haven't actually. It's kind of like it's resting on the blade of a knife for me, Merah Peak, that expedition, because it's like, one side success, other side failure. And it was like, because we didn't quite make the summit, I was like, not every summit is successful, not every summit is a failure. So it was like, what am I perceiving as a failure here? And it was kind of like, because we got up to about 6,150 and I felt so strong. I was moving fast. I felt strong. I was even surprised at my own progress on the mountain on summit night. I moved up to a good altitude within like 3 hours. I was like, this is good going, this is quick, and we got to a position not far from the summit, a couple of hours from the summit, and the snow was just too deep for me. So, got to this area where, moving up through previously, the snow had been really nice and compact. There was good layers there. I wasn't really punching through it. It was really hard, and I was making great time, great ground, felt really strong. And all my energy that I was putting into my movements wasn't being absorbed into the soft snow under my feet. It was being transferred into forward momentum because I was walking on ice basically. But then we got to this area where the snow layer on top of this softer sort of layer became a little bit thinner. So at times I was on top of it, and at times I was hip deep in snow. So for me, it was so challenging trying to at 6,000 meters of altitude, I was trying to wrestle myself out of these kind of essentially swimming in snow. As I alluded to earlier, like when if you're able-bodied and you've got your knees, you can just lift up your feet and place them on the next step up. Whereas for me, it's kind of like, you're up to your hips. You've got to then lie. I've got to lie on my front. I've got to try and double ice axe, arrest or pull myself out of this hole that I found myself in. Then you kind of fall through again. You put your weight on. So it became, I spent about an hour in this position trying to find my way sideways, backwards, forwards, trying to find myself through this area of snow that was a bit too deep. Just couldn't do it. Just couldn't move through. And I was like, well, I'm burning so much energy here. I'm at above 6,000 meters. I've had a good time. I don't want to become a casualty. I'll make a decision and I'll turn around. And I turned around and I went back down. And I was like, for me, that's a success, I think, but because I didn't go to the summit, there's a little bit inside me that's like, I wanted it, but I guess, I didn't want to risk anything or risk the team or, so.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And how did you find Nepal? Did you, I've been, I popped up to Everest Base Camp a couple of years ago. It's not easy for an able-bodied person, but
no.
How did you find the Nepalese reception of you? Were you an unusual entity for them to see? Are disabled people visible in Nepal and Kathmandu and where you were?
Yeah, I've got some interesting clips of footage on my phone when I went to, I think it was in Lukla, where we went up to kind of visit the school. Not really visit it, but the school was there, and we were kind of like doing a little acclimatization, walk just up gain a little bit of altitude, and there happened to be a school there on the side, and it must have been like, I don't know, 50, 60 kids there, all from like, I don't know, very young ages, like maybe 3 or 4 upwards, and they were just amazed. They were just amazed because I don't think they really see or have ever seen anything like that before. So they're all. It's interesting to see all the different reactions from the individual, personalities, and some of them are just like don't really notice it at all. They just see you more as a person. But others are literally can't take their eyes off your legs, and they're just like. You can just see their minds. They have no idea really what's going on. They're just trying to work it out.
Yeah.
And in terms of Kathmandu and like adults, I suppose, was it people were interested, but so I guess trying to think now. People would kind of like come and speak to me about that, but they were more interested, I think, to hear what I was doing, not necessarily about the legs necessarily. I think it was like, there's always interest wherever I go. So it's kind of like, before I got injured, I'd never seen anyone wearing prosthetics really, or taken any notice of it for sure. So whenever I walk down the street, people will notice, or often I'll get people commenting or talking to me, or, when you go into places like Nepal, in Kathmandu, it's so busy and so kind of erratic at times. There doesn't seem to be any rules of the road,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people don't really notice. They don't really notice it. They don't
Yeah.
really notice it because you're kind of in a crowd and you're just walking. And
Yes.
if you're good, I say good on your prosthetic. If I'm good on a good enabled user of these legs, then you blend in quite well. In a crowd. But if you're not so proficient on your prosthetics, you'll notice that there's something different about that individual because maybe their shoulders are moving in a different way when they're walking. That they're not very balanced, so your eye will naturally pick up that individual because they're moving differently from the normal, from everyday people. But if you're good, they won't really notice that, and you'll kind of blend in the crowd. But when you do get spotted, people are like, "Oh my god!" They're quite interested and intrigued by it, and the technology because they don't have that in Nepal.
Yeah.
So they kind of see you as a little bit, they'll ask you how much they are as a start. So they'll kind of be interested in how much they are, what they cost, and how do they get some. And you're like, you can have these if you want.
I'll just 3D print some and bring some over.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah. That is just fascinating. Everything that you've said today has been fascinating, from the point of injury to what you remember at that time, waking up in QE, bit of rehab, and then your current endeavours. What's next for you? What's next on the agenda?
So we were thinking about going and having a go at the Matterhorn. Whether it's been done already by a friend of mine, Neil Heritage, who's also an amputee in a similar position. So he recently did it. I think he did it a year ago now, maybe a little bit longer. So first, he was the first guy to get up there as a double amputee above the knee, which is quite incredible.
Wow.
So I'd be interested to go and have a little go at that and just see what happens there. But again, I need to make my prosthetics for that. I haven't got around to making the specific feet that I need for that.
Okay.
So if I can get myself in good physical, preparedness and feel like I'm in good condition with good strength and everything else, and I get my prosthetics in order, there's no reason why I couldn't have a go at it. That's a loose plan.
Loose plan. Okay, I'll look out for that then.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's with just finding out 3 things from you, if that's okay. What was the last book you read?
Oh, last book I read. Was I think it's Carl Jung's The Interpretation of Dreams.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I found it in my garage. But I found it in my garage that I'd kind of. So I've moved a number of times over the years. Now I'd either been given this book by someone many years ago, or I'd picked it up from somewhere. But I remember having it years ago, and I'd moved to a number of houses, and then I just found it in a bag, and I was like, when I was looking through other stuff or looking for something else, it just popped out. I was like, cool. So I started reading that.
Worth a read or not?
I think it's worth a read for me. Yeah, because I have an interest in, why, especially around my my injury, the dream that I had prior to waking up. So I just trying to gain a bit of insight around that, really.
Okay. What or name one of your favourite travel destinations?
Does it have to be a country, or can it be
anywhere? Travel destination, wherever you. Yeah, favourite place.
Do you know what? At the minute, because of its significance for me and the memories it holds, I would say it has to be my first mountain, which is Mont Blanc. Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad. It's not. It's not Magaluf, is it?
Oh my gosh. It wouldn't be that, I tell you.
And name one of your top 10 favourite movies.
Oh, this is not a great question for me. I'm not a big fan of movies. I don't sit down too much and watch too many. Have you got another question?
I haven't, but I will think of one now. One of your top 10 favourite songs?
My top 10 favourite songs? Oh, my top 10 favourite songs. Oh, there's so many to choose from.
I know, it's a difficult question, isn't it?
That's a really hard question.
Yeah, I know it is.
I need to look it up. Let me look it up.
Or the last song on your playlist that you've just listened to recently.
All right, let's have a look. Light songs. Okay. Lebanese Blonde.
I've heard of them.
They're by Thievery Corporation.
Thievery Corporation. Yeah. Okay, that's all right. That's quite good. You've got good taste. Yeah, that's all right. I'll accept that. That's fine. That's been accepted.
Accepted into the archives.
So where can people find out more about you, Justin? We can put everything in the show notes, but where can we find you online?
You can find me at Justin Oliver Davis on Instagram. You can find me at justinoliverdavis.com, and those really are the two main places. Okay,
excellent. Well, I will continue to follow the Instagram and see what you're up to. It's been fascinating talking to you today, Justin. Thank you so much. And hopefully we will catch up again fairly soon.
Absolutely, Deb. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for your time. It's been excellent. Nice to chat to you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the World Extreme Medicine podcast, please subscribe, like, and share. And if you want to meet lots of other risk-taking, rule-bending, and inspirational people, then you need to be in Edinburgh on the 19th to the 21st of November for this year's conference. Tickets are on sale now. Go to extrememedicineexpo.com to find out more.